Our colleague Lyse Doucet, who's in Cairo this evening. Lyse.
Yes, and here you are talking about a vacuum of power, but actually you have two people saying they're president, and you have an army giving itself sweeping new powers. And here we are at the edge of Tahrir Square, and you may hear some of the din below us. Hundreds of people have gathered, not the thousands or the hundreds of thousands that gathered here to topple Hosni Mubarak last year, but tonight it's the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood who've already jumped to the conclusion and said, our man has won, we're out to celebrate. While on the other side of town, the supporters of the former Prime Minister Ahmed Shafiq are saying, just a minute, all the votes aren't counted and our man is set to win. But who has the real power in this land? For a lot of Egyptians, it is still the army, which gave itself even more powers in its recent decree. We're going to look at those powers in just a moment. But first, let's look at the day's developments with this report from our Middle East correspondent, John Lyne.
Victory celebrations in Tahrir Square. These supporters of Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood believe he has won the race to become the next president of Egypt. But they're also furious that just before the transition to a civilian president, Egypt's military rulers have given themselves sweeping powers. Some are even calling it a military coup.
We are very angry because this is not the responsibility to decide that for us. This is the responsibility of the president, for the parliament, they can't make laws now, at least after the power went away from them.
The parliament that Egyptians voted for with such enthusiasm last year has been dissolved. Since last Friday, there have been soldiers outside preventing MPs from getting in.
We elect a president, suddenly we no longer have a parliament, and it's estimated to take 4 to 6 months before we have a parliament again. So we're not exactly in square one, but not far from there.
Today, the military rulers insisted they were committed to giving up power. But they've kept to themselves the right to make laws and to control the budget, and guaranteed themselves jobs for life. With counting almost complete, Egyptian media estimate that the Muslim Brotherhood candidate is narrowly but clearly ahead, with 52% of the vote. That would give victory to Mohamed Morsi, though retired General Ahmed Shafiq disputes the figures. Out in the souks and alleyways of Cairo, many people have grown weary of politics. They just want the country to get back to normal.
This time we need to go back to work. We don't need again to go to Tahrir again. Now enough Tahrir. Enough, khalas. We'll take from Tahrir what we need, khalas.
The key now is whether the new government can tempt back the tourists and foreign investment. Only with that prosperity will the country become truly stable once again.
John Lyne reporting. So today the Army, the Supreme Military Council, held a press conference. Their essential message was, trust us, we are going to hand over power to a civilian government, and we'll hold a big celebration at the end of the month to send that message to Egypt and the world. Well, while the firecrackers are going off in the square, we're going to discuss whether the army is to be trusted. We're joined here by Helen Mirren of Human Rights Watch. Helen Mirren, is the army holding power or handing it over?
The army is going to hand over as little real power as possible. The question is what powers the new president will have, and that, I think, calls into question the entire assumption that there will be a transition to civilian rule. Every day in the official gazette, we're discovering new military decrees that eat away at civilian power. Yesterday, the addendum to the Constitutional Declaration gave gave the military the right to object to provisions in the Constitution, a substantive involvement they didn't have before. It's removed any civilian oversight of the military, neither presidential, nor parliamentary, nor judicial. It's also embedded some of the military's powers in civilian law enforcement, which will allow them to continue using military courts. And then today, another military decree creating a National Defense Council with 11 military and 6 civilians. And it will be mandated with making decisions on issues of national security, which could basically be everything. So every day we are seeing them eat away at the civilian powers in a way that expands the powers of the military far beyond to what it had under Mubarak.
The Muslim Brotherhood, one of the most powerful political forces, has called for a 1 million-man march tomorrow. They'll be joined by other political forces. They say the army has no power to issue that kind of a decree. What will be their reaction to the streets?
The Muslim Brotherhood, to its credit, has challenged the annex to the Constitutional Declaration and a lot of these expansion of powers. They've also said that the military didn't have the right to order the dissolution of power. It had no basis for that executive order. And this is why tomorrow they've called for this march, marching to Parliament, and really calling upon the people to protest, because Parliament was the only institution that actually had the legitimacy of a democratic vote. It's completely unclear how things will evolve over the next days. Unfortunately, it will all depend on negotiations between the Brotherhood and the military, and with the rest of us looking on.
We're looking on, and look right beneath us, the birthplace of the revolution that toppled Hosni Mubarak. Does this matter anymore?
I think it still matters to the extent that people in the street, that the levels of anger against the military's encroachment on civilian authority can help influence the Muslim Brotherhood's bargaining power and the extent to which they're willing to compromise. And I think, in a sense, what some of the protesters who've already said they will go back to the square tomorrow onwards, what they want is to revive that street power, to somehow still have a role at this crucial point in the transition when any hopes of a democratic transition seem to be slipping away, and instead we're talking about a revival of military dictatorship and a military coup.
Mariah of Human Rights Watch, thank you very much for joining us here. Well, this was to have been the moment that Egyptians waited a lifetime for, celebrating the moment of a first freely elected president. Some people, as you can hear, are celebrating in the square, but Egypt is still a country plunged by uncertainty and anxiety about the future, and still a future where the military, no matter what happens, is still going to have quite a big say. That's all from us for now. Back to you in London.
Lyse, thanks once again. Thank you.